off of Doug's back.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
They still didn't.
Good morning, everyone. I need to get your attention. I'm Doug Farnsley. I'm the mayor of the city of Prospect, and I'm pleased to welcome you to City Hall for this special meeting, joint meeting of the City Council of Prospect and of Prospect's Architectural Review Committee meeting. The chair of the Architectural Review Committee seated to my right, and Christian Furman will be here, but she's going to be a little late, a member of the council. There are other members of the Architectural Review Committee here in the audience, and I'll ask that they raise their hands. So it's Herb and Herb Schulhafer and Kathy Sauer. So I don't want to repeat everything that I said 2 days ago, but I'll repeat a little bit of it. This is a second meeting in which the design team for the development of the head property between the firehouse and Harrods Creek are presenting the work that they've been doing this week on the plan for that land. So Mayor Brainerd is here, right here, and welcome back. Thanks for all your help with this project. The city has a public-private partnership with Wes Johnson and his partner Scott, who's here, and I guess Wes is here also. The city agreed to pay for this master plan and for the master plan for the development. Mayor Brainerd put together the design team led by Jeff Speck and Mike Watkins and their staffs. Jeff was here Wednesday. He's not here today, but Mike is here and members of Jeff's team are here as well as members of Mike's team. The design team arrived in Prospect on Monday. They've been working diligently since then. We saw the fruits of their work on Wednesday at the first of these two meetings, and they're here with maybe a little further along in the process. So I'll turn the meeting over in a moment to Mike, and I'll do that now. Mike, if you'll step up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure to be here, although it's also been a lot of hard work. Any of you that stopped by the studio, I think, saw that. I wonder if I might just acknowledge the team members that are here. Scott behind me, and there are others in the room, against the wall over there, because this really has been a team effort. John Avee from Spec Dempsey, and then Matthew, Brennan, Madeline, and Scott from our office teaming up to do this work with working in the Westcott offices, but with meetings with various property owners and, of course, City Council and the Architectural Review Board and so forth throughout the week. This part of the process is by no means the end. It's an ongoing dialogue, and in fact, one of the most important things that could happen for us today is the part where we get feedback from you all, because this is very much your community in the end, and we want to be responsive to your hopes and expectations for the future shape that Prospect takes. So we'll look forward to that. I'm going to attempt also to do a quick introduction to the work we've been doing, and then get into the details of the plan to some degree, and then we'll move into that question and answer part. Okay, so the property that you see on the screen is what we refer to as the study area. The head property is outlined in red. And we've been encouraged through comments, through sound planning principles, but also comments we heard when we were here on Monday to look at things like, on Wednesday, to look at things like the connectivity throughout the site, or drainage issues and slope issues and trees and so forth. And many of the constraints and that information is shown on the plan. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that. But we are responding to those things. The nature of the process is that, for example, let's take stormwater management as one example, that it too is a dialogue. So before we can definitively say this is how we're handling stormwater, we need to show the engineers a plan so they know what kind of drainage and runoff might be generated. And then we respond as designers and send them back a system and they check that and so forth. But in the end, there will be, in that particular example, there will be no additional runoff from this property than there is today. But it's just a dialogue that we'll have to go back and forth on.
Could I interrupt for just one
Please,
moment and
yeah.
do what I did the other day and sort of outline a little bit what we're looking at
Oh,
here?
please do, yeah.
To help everybody.
Yep.
So, Mike, as I understood it, the area with the red line is the what you call the study area.
Right.
And this is Harrods Creek. This is Ken Carla, which is outside the study area. Here's the firehouse. Here's, I think, Walgreens is over here. This is Timber Ridge. This is Kroger. This is the Kroger fuel station. This is looks like it's water. It's water. Sometime it's in the floodplain, but it's I call it a gully. I don't know if that's a proper term.
I don't know that that's the official term, but everyone understands it. I'm glad you pointed that out, Mr. Mayor, because one way to look at this property would be to just look at this property and turn everything else off. But that's poor planning. And in some ways, I think one could say that Prospect has developed very incrementally, making one decision at a time. Sometimes I would say without a lot of thought about what might come next. Now, there's evidence that in some cases people were thinking about what might come next, and a great example of that is the Ken Carla development, because they actually proposed a connection into this property. So they were thinking ahead, and that's what we're trying to do by showing the drainage network around the site, the steep slopes around the site. So we're looking beyond the property as we propose a design for the property. It's just the responsible thing to do to figure out how, particularly if the intention is to design a community, involves relationships with neighbors and things like that. So that's the reason for the bigger image on the drawing, but the specific area we're studying is the one outlined in red. Yeah. Okay. So why don't we zoom into the one shown in red, so you get a little better look at it here. The reason for including some of the properties to the right, say the Gustavo's restaurant, for example, is because there has been some conversation with that particular landowner about the possibility of changes to that property. So we did jump the boundary over there to include that one. Yes, thank you. Now let's get into the design. Oh, I should also point out that this is the first time I'm seeing this presentation too. It's not one I've given before. We literally stopped drawing. Well, we didn't. There was some drawing work even being done in the car, some coloring on the way over. So it's fresh off the tables and is part of an ongoing dialogue, as I said. So, so one of the things you'll notice at the bottom of the drawing, if you look at 42, there are two traffic circles shown on 42. This discussion has already occurred, and there are plans that have been approved to move forward with traffic circles along 42. We think that would be the responsible way to get into our site, is a traffic circle. So we've shown a traffic circle there as well. And when you turn into the head property at that point, what we're imagining could happen there is our shops with apartments above. So what we heard from people is that that the outdoor dining experience, which is a great community generator, would be a welcome opportunity in Prospect. So that's what we're proposing down that street. And you see these locally over in Norton Commons, where they have their kind of main street with commercial businesses below, sometimes restaurants, could be offices. Sometimes it changes over time with residential above, or sometimes office above even. As we move further in, the big, wider buildings that you see could be multifamily. And there, because we prefer not to, parking lots aren't particularly community friendly, so we put the parking lots behind. And the multifamily there, we're proposing a parking deck because it's just a more efficient use of the land, and we can, park more people in a smaller space and then get more people living in close proximity to the neighborhood center. And that center, as you continue down that street, you see it widen and you get a little bit of green, and then the big square at the end. That, I think, stands to be the most impactful space in the plan from a community standpoint, for Prospect, because that's going to give you space for the festivals, the concerts, the art shows, the farmers market, that sort of thing. A space that you have in some way right now with the wonderful park next to us. But in this case, it could be a place that accommodates a lot more parking. You could have dinner after the art show easily enough. There's a civic building site on that square. That's the red building across the street. That could be any number of civic uses. We'll have to hear more from you all about what you think would be most well received as civic uses go. There's also an outdoor amphitheater in the plan. If we had the topo turned on underneath there, you could see exactly how that nestles into the existing landform. But that's a great place, obviously, for outdoor concerts and dramas and so forth. A few live work units to the right in the upper right corner there, kind of completing that retail loop around the square. And then if we move to the left, it becomes more residential. And then we go all the way to the left, and it's, could be townhouses or single family detached homes with an alley in the back. So we keep the street and the public park in the front fully available for people, not driveways and garage doors. They go in the back. And then you'll notice that the street continues down and connects into Ken Carla. So making use of the connection that planner thought to include when they did the master plan for that neighborhood. And to the left of that that connection, you see a stormwater management pond. We don't know that that's the right size yet. As I said, there are a lot of calculations to run. We think it's the right location. The size is to be determined, but it's just part of the refining process. And then that street continues back over to the main street, lined with residential, a mix of single family, townhouse, and apartments on that street, and then back down to 42. So that's the loop. And there's a little piece of the head property up on River Road. And there, what we're proposing, a lot of the existing homes, have their individual driveways connecting to 42, which creates a lot of intersections essentially along 42, one for each driveway. What did I say? Oh, I'm very sorry. Thank you. The large lots have their driveways onto River Road. Thank you. And what we've done instead is to insert a shared driveway, small street there, and push the lots back. So all those driveways would come out onto that little lane, and you'd only have two connections to River Road. So that's the proposal in that corner. Now, this doesn't show any connections to any of the surrounding properties other than Ken Carla, because that connection was already had been previously proposed. But we heard loud and clear on Wednesday that that's a concern here, the connectivity issue. So we have jumped the boundaries without conversation yet with some of these other property owners, which of course would be necessary if any of these connections were to occur. But just to show you and the thing we didn't want to do is propose a plan that would preclude any of those connections from happening. And so this is simply to illustrate how, if an adjoining property owner was open to the possibility of connecting, how we could connect with minimal adjustment to the plan. So if we start up on River Road, you can see there's the Marina Access Drive coming down, and then with cooperation from a couple of owners there, that could connect to the Ken Carla piece. And then similarly, LDG in the top right corner already has an approved plan for their property, you know, which, as you saw from the previous scheme that I showed, is not impacted by what we're proposing here. But if they thought it was a good idea to connect, we're illustrating how there might be two connections. The first directly to the square, which we think would be potentially a great amenity to residents living in that community, to simply be able to walk over to the restaurants or the concerts and so forth. And there's also a possibility of connecting from that LDG property down to 42 between Gustavo's property there in the church and potentially a little square on 42. But all of those things would all require, we looked at one going horizontally through from the main street over to Timber Ridge. That's really tough because of the existing buildings and trying to weave through there. So that's even the most difficult of all, unless more significant changes were made. The connection to the LDG property, that actually, the scheme we're showing there generates more units and more parking than the scheme currently has. But like I said, we haven't had conversations with that property owner about that, or the residential lot owners over by the marina connection and so forth. So that all requires more conversation. And as we were realizing how difficult this particular site is, both its shape and the number of existing constraints around the property, we drove by that water company property on River Road and thought, well, that looks like the most easily developable property if only someone else didn't own it. But as planners, we're enthusiastic about what we do, and so again, jumped the study boundary to show what might happen over on that property. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that because, as I said, somebody else owns it. So let's switch back to the limits of our study area, and then let's look at this connections map, since that was something that was particularly stressed. Is the diagram coming next? Yeah, okay, great. So this is a diagram that shows just the existing streets and then the outline of the red outline of the property that we're looking at. And then next, you see the streets that are being proposed as part of this design. So we connect where we expect we can, the Ken Carla property, but not any of the other connections. So it works without the connections. And then next, if we were to get the connections, with a lot of conversation and so forth with others, it could look something like this. It's unlikely we would get them all, but we wanted to make sure our plan didn't preclude any of these. So that's the reason for suggesting what they might be. Now let's go back to the study area plan. That's it for the presentation, I should say. And but we're open to comments and feedback if now is the appropriate time to do that. Mr. Mayor, you did a great job organizing that for us on Wednesday. So if you don't mind doing that again, that would be great.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll move to citizen comments, and that's citizens is a broad term that does not include the council or the architectural review committee. So anyone who's here who's not in those two groups, if you want to be heard with a question or a comment, if you'll raise your hand, I'll recognize you and we'll go in turn. I don't believe that. Yes, sir. Oh, step up if you would, please. Hi.
Hi, everybody knows me. My name is Gustavo. I came to this beautiful community 2004, 22 years ago, and I'm a person I like to bring positive things to the community. And we just built Gustavo's with Westcott Construction 2024, open 2025. It's been a great success, and we're happy to be here in the community. But I think we need to have a better solutions about like interest and more opportunities. I think this project is bringing a lot of positive to the community, and I'm a person, man. I'm a big believer to bring positive things and do the right things and offer opportunities to younger generations. And I think this presentation, this project, it's beautiful and helps my business and helps the community and helps the young kids from school to have opportunities to work. And um, I support the project, and uh, I would like to see better benefits in the community. Like interest. And the other day, I almost have an accident myself in the morning, leaving my restaurant, and I checked both sides, and just 2 seconds, I was almost next to the other car. And I hope in the future we can make it work better. And you know, if we can, we like to help, and I'm open to see opportunities. How can we make it happen?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Gustavo.
you, everyone, and thank you for all your support. And please, any way we can help, let us know.
Thanks so much.
Gustavo's family.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Any other members of the community who'd like to be heard? All right, then we'll turn to the council and the architectural review committee. Any comments or thoughts?
Go ahead.
I would just reiterate what I said on Wednesday that I'm really looking forward to working with the developers on this because I think this project, when we can pull it off, and hopefully it'll be soon, is going to be a tremendous asset to this community and it'll probably be the crown jewel development in Jefferson County.
Thanks, Bob. Sandra?
I agree with everything he said. It's very exciting. It really is. I had two thoughts after our meeting on Wednesday. They're not important, but I'd like to make them anyway. One is when you're doing that little blip for the sewer district, it looks like a local treatment plant. We had those throughout Prospect years ago. And as sewers went to homes, they were shut down, and ultimately the property came to the city. I don't know the status of Ken Carla. They weren't a long time ago on sewers. I don't know if they are now, but as this takes place, we might encourage the Metropolitan Sewer District to give us that piece of land, which would help you with your pond possibly. I've forgotten the other one. The other one wasn't as exciting as that one.
When you think of it, just let us know.
Thank you.
Okay. Bob?
And one question on the plan, on all that green area that's west that borders Harrods Creek, is that developable land or?
It's a combination of things that make development challenging, not the least of which is wetlands next to Harrods Creek. There's steep slopes in there, some existing trees, a floodplain area. We could, on another illustration, reduce the opacity of the color and show you exactly how it lays over those constraints.
Could be used for accessible parks and boardwalks and stuff like that.
True, it can, right. Yeah, Wes is just saying it can be used for recreation activities, things like that.
Boardwalks.
A boardwalk park. Yeah.
Okay, yes.
I remember this one is more. One of the other things that we asked for was we have to use the Baptist church quite often for different kinds of meetings for different reasons. I wondered, as you thought about municipal activities, if the new building couldn't be what I think is the need for a larger city hall, and if this building couldn't be converted with some internal changes to our events thing and our police department, because I'm sure they'd like a little more room too.
Well, as I said, that civic building can take on any number of functions. I think I don't see why.
Well, I just wanted to encourage us
Yeah,
to move
yeah,
there.
great. We've got to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other members of the council? Don?
Is it too early to give an estimate of the approximate number of new residential structures?
You know, that's we have to draw things before we can count them. We've been we've been counting to make sure that parking is roughly sufficient to support the number of units. I don't have the math done yet, and I don't want to just give you numbers that circulate that aren't accurate and reflective of the plan. But we'll take the weekend off, and come Monday, that's one of the first things we'll do is start counting, being more specific about how many of each type. But I'm sorry I don't have those for you at the moment.
Thank you.
Mike, can you talk a little more about parking? You mentioned it in passing, but show us on the diagram where it is and sort of the concepts and ideas behind it.
Sure. So one of the most important types of parking in the plan is the on-street parking. So virtually every street you see there in white will have parallel parking on the street. That's important for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's great for protecting the pedestrian on the street because there's a vehicle between you and the moving traffic rather than walking right along the edge of traffic. It's also what people in the retail business call teaser parking, because of course we all imagine that we're going to get the parking space right in front of the business that we intend to go to, but often we have to park a block or so away, or perhaps even in the garage. But the idea that you could park right there is often enough to draw us to the area. And if you're on the sidewalk dining there, that parking and the buffer that it creates is also very important. So the most important form of parking I think we have is the on-street parking. But that's not sufficient for what's being proposed here. It rarely ever is. So often in the middle blocks will be parking lots, or in this case, 2 parking decks. And the way we anticipate those working, they would be lower than the buildings that surround them. So you don't see them from, oh, you were the one. Sorry, John, that brought up the park. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you on Wednesday bring up the parking garage that was exposed?
I think that was David
Commons?
Holmes.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
It
sorry.
was David.
David's not here today.
Okay. Oh, they switched seats. Oh, clever, you guys. Okay. But there's a building missing there, and that one eventually will be hidden, and so will these. They'll be wrapped.
So they're hidden by other buildings.
I say that one of the decks is exposed to the electric substation. We didn't think they'd mind, and and in many ways it would be preferable, But for all the pedestrian, the square, the streets, and so forth, you won't see the decks.
And they are.
Yeah, there's one deck. That one's completely surrounded, and then there's the one next to the substation.
Well, I don't think you mentioned your extensive work with Norton Commons, which you have done, and we're going to learn from the successes there and possibly the things that weren't so much successful there.
I have 2 tours that I give of Norton Commons. There's an attorney that sends me there to give tours to his clients, and a Virginia attorney, and he will, before he sends me, tell me which tour to give them, the A tour or the B tour. Personally, I find the B tour much more interesting because the more we study what didn't work the last time, the better the next place gets. And I gave an example of that, didn't I, the last time, how this square is different in terms of the street configuration around it.
But it looks like you've taken a street off.
No, it's hidden under the trees.
Oh,
it's
okay.
Actually,
It's there,
there are
huh?
2 things. That's a street. It's hidden under trees. But the other thing, if you notice, right by that little red circle,
Mm-hmm.
there's some cross hatching, and that's because we'd like to see if you would entertain the possibility of doing some sort of special pavers there. So in the event that street is closed for, say, the art show or something, it looks even less like a street, and when cars are using it at other times, they travel more slowly, so you have a good eye.
Would we benefit from your tour of Norton Commons, either A or B?
I like to think so, but we could take a tour and you could tell me.
I think that'd be a great idea.
We'll work on that. That's a great idea.
Let's do it. Fantastic. Yeah.
Mr. Schulhafer. So for everyone's benefit, Herb Schulhafer is a member of the Architectural Review Committee and is an architect.
Well, and what is really exciting, I mean,
I think a mixed use development definitely, would be very successful here. And I think it's very needed here. But I think something else pretty neat, many times developers, they acquire the land, they work with their designers, they get Metro Lowell to approve it or work with them. And then all of a sudden there's a little bit of a hearing, but everything's been done. And right now they've taken this, to allow everybody to take a look at what's could be, what is a proposal, and to make comments and to get feedback. So I think it's pretty rare, and I think it's, I live in Prospect, and I want Prospect to be, as livable as it can be. And I think this would be a real positive. We know we have some negatives in our shopping with transportation, and to get onto major roads. So I think it's fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. So, yes, sir. Please. And if you'll tell us your name, we're past the citizen comments, but we're delighted to hear from you. So,
well, I appreciate that. I've been a resident of Prospect for the past 26 years. I spent 25 years in River Glen, and then I've moved to Norton Commons. So I have the experience of both the properties, if you will. They're completely separate. We cannot compare one with the other, wanting either to clone Norton Commons here or to clone River Glen or some other neighborhoods over there. I think there is, and I applaud this. This is a beautiful plan, and I applaud you guys to think about, the improvements and things that we can bring to this district or this property. But I think the important thing is to also realize, you mentioned about traffic and things of that nature. Norton Commons suffers because of traffic, because of cars parked on either side, and roads are narrow. People come from outside. Of course, they want it because that's how Gustavus and everybody else gets the business, which is great. I mean, fantastic. We don't have to drive all the way to Summit for something else. But I think it's very critical to remember whatever we need to do, we have to make sure that the roads, the livability, the movement, ease of movement, especially when we have more pedestrians, is really kept top of mind from now. Because 10 years from now, we'll suddenly say, what mess have we gotten into, right? So we want to do it right now. That's all I wanted to mention.
thank you. Thank you for being here. So I think one thing that's important to mention is this is very important work, but none of it's cast in stone. And so when we talk about connectivity here or a road there, this is all open to discussion. Nobody's going to get steamrolled. Everybody will be heard, and we'll move through the process carefully and thoughtfully. Okay, anyone else on the council?
Yes,
Mayor Evans.
please. I've heard the words public-private partnership, and I look at this very well thought out plan, and it occurs to me, who's gonna build this and who's gonna pay for it? Can you tell me?
No, but there are gentlemen here who can, and I'll ask Mayor Brainerd to step up and speak to that question.
Oh, I've heard him before.
You're right. That's always the challenging part. That's why you look around the country in mayor's offices, you'll find great plans like this collecting dust on shelves in most of them, because that's the hardest part, is figuring out how to pay for it. What we found, Carmel and my 30 years of experience, is that the way to get this sort of thing done is a public-private partnership, where the city takes on things that are appropriate to the city, roads and public areas, parks, sidewalks, utilities, and private sector does what they do best, which is to gauge the market, figure out what sort of, we can do the massing and say it's where we want the road, we want the buildings this tall, but then it has to be up to the market as determined by the fellow that's signing the loans, the private sector development, what's going to work. We're looking at some pretty substantial tax revenues and other revenues that can help the city of Prospect pay for its part. The first is a system called tax increment finance. We did about 90 of these. That's where you set a base year, and all the property tax increases for a period of years goes, think of it just coming into a pot, the end of the rainbow, it just kind of flows into that pot. And you calculate that based on the square footage you're going to have, because we know that, it costs, let's say, $150 a square foot to build something. Well, we know what the tax on $150 of assessed value is. So you can look at the total square footage, calculate the revenue that's going to come when that building is built, and then that can be borrowed against that anticipated income. You've got to make sure, you got to calculate how long it's going to take it to build, because someone's got to pay the interest before the property tax starts coming in. That's called capitalized interest. And you don't want to borrow 100% of what you anticipate is going to come in either, because there could be a recession, there could be a downturn. So you usually do 75 to 90% of what you anticipate. And these bonds are usually, they're tax-free bonds, so the rates are very low. In other words, the person that buys that bond, in other words, extends the loan, they've sold on the market in New York, the person that buys that bond doesn't have to pay income tax on the revenue. The federal government, in essence, is saying we're going to subsidize City of Prospect's bonds and not charge the buyer income tax. And since the top marginal tax rate in this country is about 40% for the wealthy, the municipal bonds tend to sell for about 40% less than a bond where you have to pay taxes on it. So if I'm going to go out and buy a bond, say I'm paying 7% if I buy a Exxon bond or something, or Facebook or Meta, whatever they call themselves, Amazon. But then I buy a municipal bond, I may only get 3% interest, but I don't have to pay income tax on that 3%. So that's a nice subsidy the feds give cities to be able to invest in infrastructure. It's based on how do you pay for the infrastructure. Another thing we're looking at is preliminary, but I think everybody cares about conserving the environment. And one of the things that we can do and create a new revenue stream is there's a provision in Kentucky law that allows district energy centers to be built and owned by civic development corporations established by a city council, by local government. And just give me a minute to describe how this works. I'm not an engineer, and I'll describe it the way it was described to me years ago before we did one up in Carmel. Think about your home furnace. You turn it to 72 degrees, it heats it up, and it gets to 72 and it turns off. It stays off for half an hour or so. And now it's down to 68 degrees in your house, and the thermostat tells it turn on again. So the whole system has to heat up, use energy. It gets it back up to 72, and then it turns it off again. And that turning off and on takes about 50% more energy than if it's, and cost, than if it's left on all the time. So what we did at Carmel, we built a district energy center, serves 5 buildings. I think some of you may have been in these buildings. The big concert hall, the building across, and the parking areas across from it, serves those areas, serves City Hall, serves our court, serves our police station, serves our main fire station, and the hot and cold air goes through the ground in pipes underground. And so we set up a civic development corporation to build that energy center, entered into contracts with the city, then took those contracts to the bond market and said, based on the fact the city's going to buy this heating and cooling, will you finance this building? And they did. And worked out beautifully from that standpoint. In this case, we had the opportunity, technology is a little farther along now, to do geothermal, which is a renewable energy source. There could be a civic development corporation, and because the cost will be less, you could be, the developers could be the customer, and it creates then there's a margin because you can do it much more efficiently this way. They're paying the same amount as they would if they bought it from the power company, and with that margin, it can be used to help support the development, support programming, maybe on that green or any number of things. And we need to flush a lot of this out. But we're trying to look creatively at all these new revenue sources that could be used to help support the development. One of the things we found in Carmel too, you just look at taxes in general, we found that not only do you get the new taxes that go into the TIF district, we found that the value of the properties within half a mile, in some cases a little farther, were positively impacted, creating more revenue for city government as well, because it's they ended up being such nice areas. All the properties around them, we saw houses that were selling for $200,000 before our projects. They're now selling for the lot. If somebody wants to build a new house, the lots themselves are worth $700,000-$800,000 10 years later, and so you have that potential as well, particularly with this industrial, or not industrial, but retail properties nearby. I don't know if that answered your question, Mr. Evans, but
let me give just a little background here. Not everybody most of us in the room know Jim, but maybe everyone doesn't. Jim Brainerd was the mayor of Carmel, Indiana, which is northeast of Indianapolis, and a small city, a great success story. He was the mayor for 28 years, I think, and when he retired from that position, and the success there is remarkable, doing these types of developments. So he knows how, and the city of Prospect has employed Mayor Brainerd as a consultant to help us through this process. And I've said more than once, I really mean this. I'm not sure we'd be having this discussion if it weren't for Jim. That this is something that's not just a dream or a plan that goes on the shelf, but something that can actually happen because of the work that Jim did in Carmel proved that it can happen. So we're optimistic for that and appreciative, Jim, to you for your involvement in this project.
thank you very much, Mayor. And I want to compliment this. First of all, I've got about 4 or 5 clients now around the country, and only one I say this to, Prospect's my favorite. Some of them I kind of dread going to because they're always fighting, not having any fun. And come down here, we have fun, and we're making all sorts of progress here. People that live here, you're lucky. You got a great city council, and they want to do something, leave a legacy. It's really good for the community, and we're lucky to have a great supportive builder too. So many times in Carmel, we do these plans, and we have to go out and find the builder, and hopefully we got some interest from some good ones. And we're fortunate we've got all these pieces coming together and coming together very quickly. Doing public-private partnerships are not easy, but the results can be tremendous for a community. Like all things in life, the harder ones tend to have the best. Once you have mastered them, you tend to get good results. This is a great plan. We're lucky to have had some of the best designers available to help us start to figure this out. It's a difficult site, but the ability for Prospect to have a downtown, a place where everybody in the community feels some ownership, place people with different backgrounds, come from different places, have an opportunity to get to know each other, come together as a community. So powerful. It'll be so powerful, and I think so good for everybody that lives here. So this is my favorite client, and I just love coming here because I see so much progress being made. So thank you for including me.
John, any follow-up questions?
Yes. What I've heard is a description of the flow of money when this is in place. But getting it in place, who's paying for what and how much?
Well, that will be negotiated. And we don't know how much yet. So now that we have this,
who do I negotiate with?
so think of two sections here. You've got private sector is going to be investing capital. Public sector is going to be investing for infrastructure. And it's pretty much how cities get developed. And what we'll do, we'll sit down and figure out how much the TIF will provide. And that's what pays for the infrastructure in advance of the buildings actually going up. The roads, and there's a list under Kentucky law that says you can use TIF funds for this, and you can't use it for that. So you have a list. And there's negotiation over who signs those TIF bonds, whether it's partially the city, partially the developer, or one or the other. But what we'll sit down with our builder after we get a little farther along and have more concrete data is a public-private partnership agreement. And that's part of the team I'm putting together, people experienced in negotiating those agreements. And in that agreement, it'll lay out exactly what the developer does and exactly what the city council does. And then it'll be up to this legislative body right here to decide whether you want to sign that agreement or not. Does that answer your question?
You're close.
Okay. Well,
We're gonna need.
most days if I can come close, I'm pretty happy.
Thank you. We're gonna need a lawyer or two.
Yeah. We've identified.
Mind or familiar with these things.
Mm-hmm. We've identified a experienced lawyer who negotiates these agreements. His name is Ryan Wilmering. He's
Say it
with
again?
Ryan Wilmering. The mayor's already signed his contract. He's with the firm of Wallach, Summers, and Haas in Indianapolis. But we went to Indiana for this one because he's probably negotiated in excess of 100 of these types of agreements. We don't. It's not as common in the Louisville metro to do these sort of public-private partnerships. I wanted somebody with experience, and I've worked with him, and he's a very good lawyer. So we have that. Again, that's what I'm trying to do is put the whole team together. At some point, we'll have a public art consultant. We'll have a landscape architect. We have a TIF attorney. We have a firm that has to do the projections. We're going to use Baker Tilly. That contract was signed as well, too, to do the TIF projections. They're licensed fiscal advisors, just like a lawyer's licensed. And they have professional responsibilities and standards they work by. And we'll need their report of the projected TIF revenues to be able to even think about selling those bonds in New York. And so it's this team of people who know how to do these things that my role is to put together that team. But the final decisions are always going to be up to this council.
Well, 2 or 3 months ago, this council appropriated $500,000 to pay for gearing this up. And listen to you, I hope that's enough.
Well, it was my recommendation. I think we can get, some of these things, some of the money that's been spent to date will be reimbursable if you choose to have it reimbursed from the TIF bonds too. But yeah, I think we can get to where we need to be with that amount of money.
Mayor Brainerd, in your experience, what kind of timeline are we looking at?
Good question. I think it's important we have momentum. The economy's relatively good right now. Is to move forward as quickly as we can. I'd love to see a shovel on the ground by the end of 2026. We're looking at Wes. I think that's doable. It's going to take a lot of work and effort to get there. But again, if it gets stretched out too far, sometimes these things lose momentum. I've seen that happen. I think if we keep working as hard as we have been in the last few months, that you'll see a lot of progress fairly quickly. And, the whole project won't be built at once, but what we did in Carmel, we went in and somebody in the audience here you were showing me a picture of the reflecting pond in the middle of our city center in Carmel, and it made me think about that. So we went in and built that reflecting pond before any of the buildings around it, because getting the public investment in there first is important. It shows the business community and the residential community here, the city's committed to it. and we'd put city money in first usually, and then because the private sector saw that commitment and the lenders to the private sector saw that commitment, the private money tended to flow pretty quickly. So my recommendation, preliminary, of course, would be, okay, let's figure out how we fund that amphitheater and that green space and that civic building, get that and the street going in, get that part built, make them beautiful, and then it's easier to get that private sector money going. I always found, the city take a little leap of faith, paid off.
May I have a moment to follow on that point? When we were here Wednesday, I said that one of the things that I was very impressed with that's not immediately obvious passing through Prospect is the strong sense of community that exists here. And I've had the opportunity to get to know more people and see that firsthand and learn about the history of this place and how important that is. And as an outsider observing the physical place, I don't think the physical place yet lives up to that strong sense of community that you all enjoy, that exists, but it's not evident in the physical place. There are signs of it. Clearly, this park is a great example. But in this plan, oh, and who was the gentleman, you, sir, from Norton Commons? I didn't catch your name. Do you mind sharing? Suhas Kulkarni. Suhas, great. Suhas said a very interesting and observant thing when he mentioned the having enough space for the pedestrians. And one of the things I'll point out on our tour, should we have one, is that actually the sidewalks at Norton Commons in front of the businesses are inadequate in width for the popularity of the outdoor dining there. And you'll notice in this plan that Main Street, as it comes in, terminates on a portion of the sidewalk that's much wider. So, Gustavo, that's the location, should you have another restaurant, that would be ideal for the restaurant because the sidewalk does get wider there. So the intention is to invest more in the public realm so that you have more space to enjoy community here. That civic park square in the center is another example of an amenity that the city doesn't yet have that this plan could offer. We mentioned the civic building site, the one in red, the amphitheater. We didn't talk much as you continue down the road. Now I'm confused if your name tag, I don't think your name tags are matching.
I don't know, what is mine?
Sorry, but you brought up the all that green space down at the end, and that's actually ideal for trail connections. And you'll notice that street ends in a connection, an overlook. There's a little building, keep going. Right there is a little overlook into the woods for those who aren't so ambitious that they want to hike down to the woods. But the trail can continue, and you see trails, there we go, trails through the woods that would connect various places. So there's what I like to think of as civic infrastructure. This is not all about streets and parking and utilities, also about that, but it's also about that important civic structure that will give your community places to simply enjoy being together. So sorry to jump in there.
Thank you for that.
I think maybe Wes wanted to say a few words as well. So
my next.
Okay.
Wes, if you'd step up and introduce yourself.
I'm Wes Johnson. I own Westcott Development with my partner Scott, my wife. I think his wife is here as well, and some of our team. We operate our business at the top of the hill right next to the Thorntons in the old car wash. And I've lived here almost 25 years in Oldham County, as long as I've lived in Kentucky. I have moved up from Georgia. My kids are in school at North Oldham. We travel up and down 42, unfortunately, probably 40 times a day. So obviously we do it taking kids to school and going to work right in the middle of rush hour. We come home, we sit in the hill waiting on traffic. So we see and experience everything everybody experiences. We also have young kids. We like to go out to dinner, and we drive through Prospect to Norton Commons or to the Paddock Shopping Center or to downtown. We frequent regularly to eat dinner, to hang out with friends, to go just experience what Louisville has to offer. It's so many things that were said today are interesting that I wanted to touch on, but I won't take 2 hours of your time. The city has done something here different than what normally happens. I was thinking, not often does a developer get the opportunity to sit in front of the public and City Hall and get feedback. But then I thought, that's really not true. Developers, private developers, get that opportunity anytime they want to take it. They just don't choose to do it. So the interesting thing about this is a piece of property came up for sale. I've been here, I've met many of you, sometimes trying to get stuff pushed, and sometimes I was the pusher, and y'all have seen that side. But it's pushing for something great and pushing for Prospect to be better. When this property went up for sale, I stopped by, or Doug stopped by and said, hey, do you think we could ever do something great with that? And typically, I'm the most creative in the room. I have more ideas than people want to hear, and I think a little bigger, and I'm told to rein it back. Doug, somehow or another, met Jim. Jim and Doug have assembled a team that, quite frankly, is way more creative than I could ever imagine. And early in the week, what's happened in this 1 week is so much. I mean, what would normally take a developer working with a civil engineer 6 months to a year to plan a community like this? And although the plan's not done, but even to get to this phase between surveying and between just understanding it, Mike and the team of people that are here are best in class, truly. So they came in Sunday night. They showed up like a ball of fire at my office on Monday morning. They took over my office. It's a wreck. So don't come up there today. There's literally stuff everywhere, and they literally worked until they pulled in here today. But what they did in a week, and one day I was sitting there after one day looking at their plan, because they dream so big and so much bigger than even I do, that I got scared on Monday. And that's true. And I said to them, guys, I love it, but I don't want to draw something and present something that we don't have the capability of building. And that's true. And this plan, as grand as it is today, it was bigger on Monday, because we said, hey, we're just going to plan like there's not a floodplain. And we're going to maximize every inch of that property. And then at the end of the Monday, we took all these individual plans and we said, okay, reality. We can't do that. Louisville has a thing called MSD. Everybody's aware of it. And they're very restrictive. And we're not downtown New York. You know, we have to grow into this community. We can't build every square inch of this and fill it up in the next 5 years. I know that. I get that. So Monday evening, we started cutting portions off, you know, pulling this off and saying, okay, what can we lose that we're not losing anything in this development? We can't lose the civic space. We can't lose the outdoor amphitheater. That's the whole part that started this. We want to build community. And when they drew a parking garage, I'm a private developer in Louisville, Kentucky. There's not very many parking garages that are built by private developers because they're expensive and they don't pencil, and banks won't finance them for us unless there's a need beyond what we want to do. I don't know how to do that. The nice thing is, when I'm telling them I can't afford a parking garage, Jim is saying, don't worry about that. Carmel has parking garages everywhere. We know how to do it. So I said, okay, put the parking garage back in, because what the parking garage gives us, which, by the way, you never see it. It's beautiful. You drive past them every day in his city. You drive past them in Norton Commons. You have no idea they're a parking garage. But what it does is it gives us the ability to get people out of Hunting Creek and out of Sutherland over to this development where we're going to be holding public events. And it gives them a place to park. Because if we don't have a place to park, and when they get there, they keep on driving and they go downtown to Waterfront Park. And we don't want them to do that. We want them to stay here in our community with everything you guys are already doing. So I'll say this, because a lot has been shown in a week's time, and very seldom does that ever happen. I want you guys to know, and there's a lot of specific questions that I was cringing, because I don't want to give answers, because I don't want to be the developer that says, here's how many spots we're producing, here's how many square feet, here's the revenue, because quite frankly, we don't have it figured out yet. But in the coming weeks and months, this team, coupled with our local engineers and architects, coupled with City Hall, coupled with attorneys that Jim has assembled and Doug, we're going to figure it out. Our hope is to be back here on many occasions doing just this, discussing what the possibilities are, till we get to a point where we all agree for our community. This is what we want. We want it as a developer. Y'all want it as a city. The residents are behind it. That's truly what we get to do. And beyond Carmel, Indiana, and maybe a few other cities that you can count on one hand, very seldom, at least have I ever seen, public and private come together and say, let's do this together. It just doesn't happen that often, but we have the opportunity to do it. You guys have the interest in doing it, and we have momentum. And when you got the momentum, you got to run with it. We have had so many people through our office this week that are Louisville residents, Prospect residents, who, by the way, these are business mentors of mine. So I'm bringing them up there saying, what do you think? Are we crazy? Would you invest in this? These are guys that invest in other deals. And they're leaving, and 10 minutes later, they call us. We're in. Tell us what you need. We're in. So how do you pay for it? You pay for it by designing the best, committing to making sure that what we present at this plan is what gets built, because that doesn't always happen. But you drive through Norton Commons and you see that what we met with an original Norton Commons developer who in 1997, 30 years ago, they did this same process. And he's 80 something years old. And at 11 o'clock, he was walking us around for an hour and a half, Norton Commons, so proud of the community that he thought of 30 years ago with this same team, by the way. Maybe not the younger people in the back. But 30 years ago, they drew this out, and he has stayed there, and he is committed to making that happen. And they're 4 years away from having that development built out at 100%. And I asked him, I said, why are you even here? Because he doesn't need to be there anymore. Obviously, it's been a success. He says, I want to see it through. I want to see it through. I want to finish it. And that's incredible. So I don't know that I'll be here in 20 years, 30 years. I hope to be toes in the sand somewhere. But we're excited to be a part of this and what's to come in Prospect. We do feel like the team that Doug and Jim has assembled is best in class. Quite frankly, we don't get the opportunity to work with these caliber people on a regular basis. They're not here. We just don't get the opportunity. So we thank you guys for coming. We thank you for your feedback. I want you guys to know, and I want you to hear it from me. My office is at the top of the hill. And so many times when this comes before a zoning meeting, which will happen way down the road, somebody stands up and they say, you never gave us the opportunity. And I'm telling you guys, it doesn't have to be at a public meeting for you to come and voice concerns. Our office is open Monday through Friday. I've got cards. I'll give you my number. You show up there. And if you think I don't care, you're wrong. We do care because I'm going to be dining here. I'm going to be hanging out in the public spaces with my family. My wife is. I hope my kids will have their kids one day and look back and say, look what happened in 2026 when these guys came into town. They master planned a city, and look what happened. And this is how it happens. So thank you all for having us. Thank you for entertaining a kind of a rare deal that we get the opportunity to be a part of. We are incredibly excited. And by the way, we're not the only developer who's going to be a part of development in Prospect. I know that, but I'm excited to be the one that's here at the beginning and starting off the kickoff of what is a great transformation of downtown Prospect.
So Wes, you mentioned the gentleman at Norton Commons who was one of the original developers, and you shared with me something that he said to you about where we are right now. Would you talk a little bit about that?
You know, and I don't know if I'm going to tell you or say exactly what you're mentioning, but you know, I sat with him at dinner. We went to Watch Hill proper. We had a big group. And it was interesting. It was so loud in there that you couldn't talk to anybody but the person next to you. I never met the man, although I go to Norton Commons all the time. And the guy who I thought was the spearhead for Norton Commons is not who this guy was, the guy that actually happened. And the neat thing for me, just because sometimes you get these moments in life where it's like, for an hour and a half at dinner, he had his hand on my shoulder, looking right into my eyes. And I'm asking him, can we do this? And he said, you can do it. Don't worry. He said, here's what we did. We negotiated a good deal on a piece of property years ago. That gave us the ability to take down land incrementally along the way. We pulled together a small group of people who committed to helping be the private funding for this. And then we just did it one bite at a time. And that's how it happened. They didn't take one bank loan. The developers didn't. Now, does that mean there wasn't loans involved and other kind of funding? No, that doesn't mean that. Are we going to be able to do it the same way they could? Probably not. They had a flat field. We don't. We have a lot of other things to contend with. They had more room, which means more opportunity for surface parking. We're going to have to consolidate that because we don't have that ground. And what the neat thing is this group designs on raw ground, but then you've got Jim's experience doing just this. An infill redevelopment of a city is totally different. We don't own property right next to us. When we say it would make sense to put a road through here so that we can connect to Timber Ridge right at Kroger, like that makes sense. We all agree, but we don't own the property, so we don't have the right to do that without convincing the developers next to us that this community, attaching their development, which is approved, to this community is going to drive their property values up. It's going to make their development worth more. It's going to make leasing their facility faster because now the people that live there aren't on an island. Now they can walk down the street and they can eat dinner and they can come to a park. We feel like we have the ability to go to them and say, hey, can you be a part of this? And if so, what does that look like? And we don't have the answers yet. It's my job to sell it. And I'm excited to do it because I believe in what we've drawn. I believe in what we're doing together. And I think it's doable. I think it's doable.
Okay, thank you, Wes, very much. Council members, Architectural Review Committee, any other questions or comments? So the members of the public who are present, anybody got something on their minds they want to say? Yes, sir.
First of all, I want to recognize.
Let me get you to step up because we're broadcasting.
I wanted to recognize Mayor Jim. He may not remember, but maybe about 15 years ago, I saw him in Washington, D.C. at Select USA. Have you all heard of Select USA? And that is a program put together by the State Department to help people come from all over the world and invest in our properties. And so we had a booth for Kentucky. I was in that booth for Kentucky. And we had a booth for Indiana and a booth for Ohio. And right behind the booth, the only city in that entire conference was Carmel. So I wanted to recognize the fact that he's been thinking along these lines for so long. Only one message I would like to leave with you all is when you do the green space and plant trees, please remember that the trees grow roots and the roots tear up the sidewalks. The problem with Norton Commons is even if there are sidewalks, you can't walk on them because the roots have torn up the pavements and people have to avoid them. They have to get back on the street. I mean, it's not fun to just go walking. I walk 3.5 miles a day in Norton Commons, and I know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you again. Okay, if there's no further business to come before this group, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And Ms. Leonard's made the motion. Mr. Clark seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.